Hello, welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to share how to create always-on availability group for SQL Server on Azure VMs. This is a single subnet case where all of your replicas, I mean primary and secondary, are located in a single subnet. Let's get started. First of all, there is a prerequisite before moving forward. Please configure a domain on Azure with one domain controller and two SQL Server replicas located in the same domain and in the same subnet. You can also add a witness here, server, to the same subnet according to your preference. We will configure cluster by using VM1 and VM2. We will also add VM3 as witness in the future videos. I have a YouTube video on how to configure this domain. Please follow the link to access that video. So we will follow following steps to create AG cluster. First of all, we will configure domain accounts. Then we will add these accounts to the servers and give necessary permissions. Afterwards, we will install Windows Failover clustering feature and configure firewalls and create Windows Failover cluster. Please kindly note that SQL Server AG cluster works on the Windows Failover cluster. What I mean is Windows Failover cluster works as a foundation for SQL Server cluster. SQL Server cluster works above the Windows Failover cluster. So therefore, creating the Windows Failover cluster before creating AG cluster is a prerequisite. Then we will enable availability group feature and create availability group database. And finally, we will create a backup share location where synchronization happens and then create availability group cluster. First of all, we configure domain accounts. We start by creating 3 accounts in our domain. First one is install, second one SQL Service 1 and SQL Service 2. This install service account is used to install Windows Failover clustering. Remaining 2 accounts are used as logon accounts for SQL services. Afterwards, we give necessary permissions to the accounts in domain controller. For install account, we give read all permissions and create computer objects permission. This allows the install account to create necessary objects in domain controller for our cluster. Finally, we give validated write service principal name and read service principal name and write service principal name for SQL Service 1 and SQL Service 2 so that our SQL service can unregister and register SPNs in domain controller when SQL services are restarted. So let's configure the accounts. First of all, we log into our domain controller. Here, I have already logged into the domain controller and go to Server Manager. In Server Manager, we go to Tools and go to Active Directory Administrative Center. We go to our domain name and go to Users and click on New and User. First, we create install account. And set password for the account. Please choose other options according to your company's rules. We set other password options as never expires. Then we create OK. Then we repeat the same procedure for other accounts. We go to User and go to SQL. So we have finished creating the accounts. After creating accounts, we give necessary permissions to each account in our domain controller. To this, for example, we log into domain controller, go to tools, again Active Directory Administrative Center, then go to our domain name and go to properties. Here we go to their extensions, then click on add and type our install account, which we just created. Then we add this, and for this we go down. Then we go to advanced and add, select principal and install. We should make sure that read all permissions, read all properties here, and create computer objects should be enabled, which we search for create computer objects here, and we click on OK, apply, OK, then OK. So we finished giving necessary permission for install. After giving necessary permissions to install account, we switch to giving necessary permissions to SQL Service 1 and SQL Service 2 accounts. For this, we go to Tools, and we go to Active Directory Users and Computers, and we go to Computers here. And as you can see, we have three computers: SQL Server VM1 and SQL VM2, and our witness. We go to first server and go to Properties. Here, we go to, before doing this, we need important setting. We advanced features. We should click on this. This allows to see more advanced features. Then we go to properties and then go to security and add, then SQL. Since this is a first computer, SQL VM1, we choose SQL VM1 account and click OK. Here we go down and choose validated right service principal name. Validated right service principal name. Allow. Then go to advanced feature and click add. Search for SQL name 1. And if you go down, you can find SPN related permissions. Read and write service principal name. It should be a little above. Yeah, it's here. Write is already enabled. We click OK, apply, and OK. Then apply and OK. So we repeat the same procedure for SQL Service VM2 account. So we finished giving necessary permissions for 2 SQL Server related accounts. After configuring the accounts, we should add them accordingly to each server. Firstly, we add install account as admin account in each SQL Server VM replicas, because this account creates failover clustering with the replicas and should have admin access in each replica. Secondly, we add install account as sysadmin in each SQL Server. And then afterwards, we configure permissions for the account called NT Authority System in SSMS. And finally, we set SQL Service 1 and SQL Service 2 accounts as the SQL server service login accounts in each replica. Let's get started. Firstly, we log in to our first SQL Server VM. We go to Windows icon, right-click, and go to Computer Management. Then we will go to Local Users and Groups. We go to Groups and go to Administrators. Right-click Properties and add our install account as administrator to this node. Apply and OK. We repeat the same for our second server. We go to Computer Management and go to Local Users and Groups and Administrators. Add, install, click OK, OK, and apply. After finishing adding the install account as administrator to each of our SQL Server VMs, we go to the SSMS in the first server and go to Security and Logins, right-click, and New Login. We click on Windows Authentication, Install, Search. We click on Entire Directory and Search. Check names, click OK, and server roles should be sysadmin. Click OK. So we added install as sysadmin in our first server. We repeat the same for our second server. Go to Logins, New Login, and search, install, names, entire directory, check names, OK. Server roles, sysadmin. So we finished giving the necessary permission to install account in each SQL Server instance. Afterwards, we go to New Query, then run following commands in each server. I have added these commands to the description section of this video. You can use that. So we run that. If system authority account already exists, you will face this error. So do not worry and go ahead. Go to the second server and run the same commands in the server also. After running these commands, we go to the first server again and open the server configuration manager. After running the command, we go to configuration manager, SQL Server configuration manager, and go to properties of our SQL Server. Here you can see that it is installed already. Because I was testing this SQL Server, so please do not pay attention. I think you will see as a default account in this case, or the account you have configured while installing the SQL Server. So we go to Browse and search for SQL Server service account we created in our domain. So we see the location, entire directory, check names, and we select SQL service account, first one, because we are in the first node. So we select the first one. Or I think it had been disabled, properties. Okay, so click next, and we type the password for this account. Then we apply and continue. And we repeat the same procedure in the second node, but for different account. We search locations entire directory and SQL, and this time we choose second one and click OK and apply. Yes. Oh, I think we forgot the password. And apply and OK. Okay. And as we can see, logon account has been changed to SQL Server service account first. And in our second instance case also, it has been changed. So we finished setting two accounts as logon account to two nodes respectively. After configuring accounts and adding accounts, we are ready to install clustering features in each of our SQL VMs. For this, we go to SQL VM and go to Add Roles and Features and click Next, Next, and we click Next until we come to Features. Here, we search for Failover Clustering and add features and click Next. And we click on Restart the destination server automatically if required. Click Yes and install. And we repeat the same for our second VM. We click on Add Roles and Features and click Next, Next. Then come to Features and Failover Clustering, add features, and click again the same and install. It may take a while until these features are installed. After adding failover clustering features, our VMs are restarted. Then, after installing the features, we configure the firewall rules. We go to Firewall and go to Advanced Settings and go to Inbound Rules. And here we set new inbound rule, new rule, port, and specific ports we type for 1433 for our SQL Server VM. Then we type for 599999 for our load balancer probe port. Then for database mirroring, we type 5022 and click Next of the connection, domain, cluster, ports. Finish. So we repeat the same for the second VM. Go to second VM and firewalls, advanced features, and go to inbound rule, new rule, and port, specific ports, 59999, and then 5022. Next. Next, and cluster ports. Finish. So we finished configuring the firewall rules. After setting firewall rules, we are ready to create a cluster. But please pay attention to this point. Before creating a cluster, we should log in to each SQL VM with install accounts. As you can see, currently I'm logging is at install account, which we created in the preceding steps. So the first VM and second VM also, I have logged in as install account. Please do not forget to log in as install account, which has administrator access to in each SQL VM, and also sysadmin access in SQL Server VMs. Otherwise, the creation may fail. So after logging in as install account, we go to Tools and Failover Cluster Manager. Let's start from SQL VM 1. We go to Tools, Failover Cluster Manager. So here we open Failover Cluster Manager. Right click, create cluster. Next, and we search for our VMs. Sorry, I think we should search for computers, yes, and my DOM AG, it would be, I guess. Let's see. Yes, it is AG SQL VM1, and click OK. So we click Next. We click No, I don't need, and we type the cluster name. We type it at AG 2019, and Next. Click Next, and the cluster creation starts. We wait for a while until the creation finishes. So it finishes very quickly. Then we click on Finish. After creating the cluster, if we go to Roles, and we go to here, and we can see that it is already online. So we finished creating a cluster. Please note that we did not finish creating SQL cluster. We finished creating Windows failover cluster. After creating a cluster, we should add another node to the cluster. So we click on Add a node and click Next and browse and AG names, and we can find the second cluster and second node here. So click OK and click Next. No, I don't require it, and click Next. So it may take a while until the adding finishes. Okay, it already ended, and click Next. So we can see in the nodes that we have two nodes in our cluster now. In our Windows failover cluster, it's not SQL cluster yet, because we did not create a cluster at SQL Server level yet. After adding the node, our cluster is ready to create. Our cluster is ready, and we can create SQL Server Failover SQL Server Availability Group cluster with these two nodes. So to create our SQL Server cluster, firstly we go to Configuration Manager and enable clustering mechanism for our SQL Server instance. So we go to our SQL Server and Properties, and then we go to Availability on Availability Groups. So we click on Available, make it available, and click OK, and click OK. Okay, so we repeat the same for our next replica. So Configuration Manager, and go to Configurations, so Properties, Availability Groups, Enable, click OK. So now we are ready to create the SQL Server Failover cluster, SQL Server Availability Group cluster. To create SQL Server AG cluster, we go to our first SQL VM and go to SSMS. And in case we will go to also SSMS in our second node. It may take a while until SSMS starts first. So we log in our SSMS and create the database which we use for our availability group cluster. We create new database, AG, we name it as AG database. Okay. So we created the database, and after this, we click on the we create the backup share point in the first node. For this, we go to computer management and the shared folders, shares, and a new share, and click next, browse. Or I think we should create first the other folder. So we click on C disk and new folder. It is backup share. Okay, and we click on our C disk here. Backup share. Yes, and click next. Next, and customize permissions. Please do not forget this. And we should give the permission to everyone. Control and click next and finish. So we finished creating the shared folder. Afterwards, we take the full backup of this. So our database, we take tasks and backup. AG requires full database backup before creation. So we take the backup in default location. Click OK. And click OK. Then we go to Failover cluster. I think we should reconnect. Oh, I think we did not restart our SQL Server VMs. So therefore it is causing the issue. Because after enabling availability group mechanism, we did not restart. So it requires restart. We restarted. And please do the same in the second server also. We open always on high availability, then right click, new availability group wizard. We will start this. Then click next, and then we name our availability group which is in my case AG 2019 new group. So we do not touch other features, so click next. Then we click on AG database. We are using this newly created database in our cluster. Click next. Then we can see that currently SQL VM1 has been selected as primary role because we are installing the SQL Server cluster in this VM, as you can see here. So we set like automatic failover. Then we can see that there is no other replica. So therefore we click on add replica. We click on 2 and click next. So click also automatic failover. Other settings depends on you. And we can see the port number here 50 to 2, and which we set for firewall, we should pay attention that it should be, this port number should be open in both servers, which we did already. So we set backup preferences. Listener we will set in future series. So therefore, please set these points in according to your preference. So we click next. So there are many features. There are many synchronization ways you can set. In my case, I select full database and log backup, and I will browse and point out to the location which we created, like a shared folder. As you might remember, like we created already this shared location. Then click next, and we wait a while. Okay, it finished very quickly. So it keeps your listener configuration does not exist. No worries, we will set it in our future series. So click next and finish. Now configuration has been started. It should not take so much time. Yeah. So all of them succeeded, and we close, and we will do refresh once and go to failover cluster, availability cluster, and we can see that our cluster has been created. Open, and we can see that we have 2 replicas, 1 and 2, and availability database, and group listener. We don't have listener now, so listener is not shown here. So we can also confirm the same setting in SQL VM2. If you go there, you might have seen, you might see there, like we do once refresh, go to availability group, and you can see the same setting in this replica. Like, sorry, it is VM1 now, right? So let's connect VM2. VM2, and here, if you go to availability group, in VM2 also, the same settings can be seen. So you can see the configurations of your availability group with the help of dashboard. For this, right click and show dashboard. The dashboard should be shown. Here you can see that you have 2 replicas, VM1 and VM2, and primary and secondary, synchronous. And then failover mode is automatic and others. So if you want to failover, what I mean is to make VM2 as a primary replica, we start failover wizard. And I click next, and next, we click connect, and next, and finish. It may take about 10 seconds maximum, so it finished very quickly. And now if we do refresh, we can see that now our VM1 is secondary while VM2 is primary. So we have finished settings. We have finished creating SQL Server Availability Group. So please follow next videos in which I will set a listener for this availability group. Thank you for your attention.